The Parthenon, Greek temple design, tone Parthenon. The center of ancient Athens was the Acropolis, a Greek word meaning high city. The Acropolis was the geographical and religious center of Athens. Ancient Greeks, like many other ancient peoples, established their cities on the tops of hills in order to defend against their enemies. In times of war, all the citizens living on surrounding land would climb the Acropolis and take shelter inside the high walls. Visitors still climb up to the Acropolis on the Sacred Way. At the top of the stairs, they would pass through the Propylaeum, an elaborate gateway. To the right, they would see the Parthenon, the largest temple, which honors the patron goddess of the city, Athena. According to the myth, when Athens was first built, both Poseidon, the god of the sea, and Athena, the goddess of technology and war, wanted to become the patron of the new city. Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, bringing forth a saltwater spring that he offered as a gift to the new city. Athena, however, offered the olive tree. Since the olive fruit could be used for food, heat, and light, the citizens recognized that Athena's was the much better gift, and so dedicated their city to her. Here you can see the Acropolis as it might have appeared in the 5th century BCE. An Athenian would enter the Acropolis through the Propylaeum, a covered walkway supported with columns. In Greek, Propylaeum means front gate. Here's what the Propylaeum looks like today. The steps originally led up to a covered walkway supported by the columns that you can still see. The walkway had a gate that could be closed against invaders. As you walk through the Propylaeum, on the left are two other important religious sites. The Erechtheum, a temple that marks the location of Poseidon's spring, and Athena's olive tree. The Erechtheum sits on the place where Poseidon struck the ground with his trident and brought forth his spring. The Athenians dedicated the temple to Poseidon, even though they rejected his gift. The building is most famous today for this porch, which is supported by columns sculpted in the shape of women's bodies. These statues are called caryatids. In the picture on the right, you can see how large the caryatid sculptures are. The Parthenon dominates the Acropolis. This photo shows the back of the temple. The entrance is around the front, facing the east, like all Greek temples. The Parthenon gets its name from the Greek word for virgin, because Athena was a virgin goddess. In ancient times, you would have seen massive sculptures adorning the building, and the roof would have been intact. When the Acropolis was sacked during the Persian Wars, the Athenians had taken an oath that they would not rebuild for 30 years, but would leave the ruins to remind all the citizens of how close the Persians had come to defeating them. When Pericles took over the leadership of the city, he was determined to rebuild the Acropolis and make it more splendid than ever. Beginning in 449 BCE, he hired the famous sculptor Phidias to design a great new temple in honor of Athena in the classical style. Phidias chose the Doric order for his magnificent new temple. There are 3 styles in classical Greek architecture called orders. The 3 orders are Doric, Ionic, and Corinthian. The Parthenon was constructed in the Doric order. You can identify the order of a temple by examining the tops of the columns, called capitals. The Doric capital is very plain. The Ionic order may be identified by the volutes, or curlicues, on the capitals. Corinthian capitals are decorated with acanthus leaves. Corinthian is the most elaborate order, favored by the Romans. In the Doric order, the pediment is the triangular recess nearest the roof, which was filled with sculptures. In ancient times, the pediment of the Parthenon held larger than life-size sculptures. Here is a reconstruction of the pediment sculptures on the Parthenon. You can see Zeus, the king of the gods, sitting on his throne. Athena with her spear stands next to him. To the right, Poseidon, god of the sea, sits with his trident. The sculptures from the pediments of the Parthenon were stolen and removed to England by Lord Elgin, a British military officer stationed in Athens in the 18th century. Even though they are in ruins, the Elgin marbles are considered to be the finest examples of classical Greek art. They are now located in the British Library in London. The Greek government is negotiating to have them returned to Greece. Below the pediment is a row of triglyphs and metopes. Triglyphs are architectural panels that are fluted to catch the light. They were alternated with metopes, which in ancient times were filled with sculpture. The metope sculptures on the Parthenon showed scenes from the war between the Lapiths, a race of giants, and centaurs, creatures who were half man and half horse. In this scene, you can see the centaur getting the better of the Lapith, who is on his knees. Though the original metope sculptures from the Parthenon are in London with the pediment sculptures, archaeologists have installed some reconstructions on the temple in Athens so that visitors can imagine what they would have looked like in ancient times. Here you see the line of metopes and triglyphs on the ruins of the Parthenon. The arrow points to a reproduction of a sculpture that the modern restorers of the temple have put up so that visitors can visualize the effect. Try to imagine sculptures in every metope, along with the frieze sculptures running along continually right underneath. Below the row of triglyphs and metopes is another sculptural element called a frieze. The frieze wrapped all the way around the temple and told a story. The Parthenon frieze showed the Panathenaic procession. Once a year, the Athenians celebrated a holiday in honor of Athena. They walked in a great parade from a shrine for Athena located just outside the city, through the city streets, up the Sacred Way, through the Propylaeum onto the Acropolis. The procession ended at the front door of the Parthenon. All the citizens brought gifts and sacrifices for the goddess. Here, you can see some of the horse riders in the Panathenaic procession. This panel was part of the Parthenon frieze sculpted by Phidias. In this part of the Parthenon frieze sculpture, the gods are watching the procession in their honor. Here we have Poseidon on the left, Apollo, and Athena herself. In the 5th century, Poseidon would have held a real trident in his left hand. You can see how he is gripping the handle. The pediment, triglyphs, and metopes, and the frieze, taken together, are called the entablature. So far, we have only looked at the outside of the temple. This plan shows the interior of the Parthenon. As you entered the front of the building, which faced east, you would cross the peristyle, a walkway going all the way around the building, open to the air, whose roof was supported by columns. You would then cross through the anteroom, or pronaos. In the center of the naos, or sanctuary, you would see the Chryselephantine cult statue, and toward the back, you would see the opisthotomus. Notice that Greek temples are mathematically proportioned according to the ratio called the golden mean. The number of columns in the outside rank running north to south, 8, are in the proportion of 2x plus 1 to the number running east to west. So 2 times 8 plus 1 equals 17 east-west columns. After you crossed the peristyle, you entered the pronaos, or anteroom. From there, you went into the main sanctuary, the naos, called the cella in Latin. Here was located the great statue of Athena, which rose more than 40 feet in height. The presence of the goddess was reflected in a pool of water in front of the statue, making her look even larger. Behind the naos was the opisthotomus, which is used as a storage area for the many offerings that worshippers brought for the goddess. This drawing shows a reconstruction of the great statue of Athena in the Naus. The arrow is pointing to an adult of average height to give you an idea of the size of this structure. The goddess is clothed in her battle dress. Her huge shield shows one of her symbols, a snake, and she holds a winged Nike, or victory, in her right hand. The cult statue did not survive the ancient period because it was made of gold and ivory, or chryselephantine. This picture suggests how imposing and lifelike the statue must have been. The huge cult statue was adorned with a peplos, the type of woman's robe shown here. The peplos for the statue was made of real cloth and was replaced each year by the women of Athens. It was a great honor for the women of one's family to be chosen to weave the peplos. The women carried the new peplos in the Panathenaic procession each year. They would take it into the naus and place it on the statue at the end of the procession. The one thing you might expect to find inside a temple is an altar. Greek temples differ from modern places of worship in that the altar was located outside the front door. The arrow in this picture points to one of the few surviving ancient Greek altars. This one is in front of a temple of Apollo in the city of Delphi. The Greeks used the outdoor altars to sacrifice animals to the various gods. The Greeks are still hard at work on restoring the ruins of the Parthenon so that the many visitors to Athens may get a good sense of what the building looked like 2,500 years ago. Even now, the Parthenon stands as the most complete and outstanding example of the glory that was the Greek Golden Age.